The true story of Stellina.
This is story of
This is the true
Stellina.
story of Stellina. Stellina, a baby Finch, who found herself stranded on a busy city sidewalk from her nest. Stellina, who waited and waited for her mother to return, while cars roared past. Stellina, who discovered a new home in the family in a surprising way. This is the story. This is the true story of Stellina.
Good.
Stellina was a bird, Chip, a very little bird, Chip. Honey, my wife once saw a very little bird on the corner of 46th
46.
and 3rd in Manhattan 10.
Good.
My wife once saw a very little bird on the corner of 46th and 3rd in Manhattan. Cars were rushing by. Roar! Cars are loud in the city, but Chip Holly heard. Holly, my wife has very good ears. Could you also have heard Chip? On the corner of 46th and 3rd in the middle of the day, while cars are rushing by. Roar!
목 아파.
That's not right. It's still here. But as I was saying, Chip heard all of a sudden a bird, a very little bird, had to fly from her nest. Her nest must have been, and this is what we think. Instead, a traffic light post high above the corner of 46th and 3rd. Holly, my wife, waited and waited and waited and waited and waited. She hoped, she told me, that the very little bird's mother, Chip, would return to take her back to her nest. But her mother didn't return. Who knows why she didn't or where she went. So Stellina, Chip, stood out there for a while, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to say, except, of course, Chip, and not knowing how to get around all by herself and such. Big place as Manhattan.
Start.
It was evening when Holly, my wife, decided to take Stellina home with her. They sat together for a while, looking at each other, and what must have wondered. And now, what's going to happen now? They spent hours and hours together. From home, they used to go out to many places. They always traveled by subway. Holly, my wife, carried Stellina in a little box, where she patiently sat without saying a word. Perhaps Holly, Chip every once in a while, but nothing else. Or maybe she was wondering, and now, what's going to happen now? Stellina would go with Holly, my wife, to her office. Chip, and stand there on her desk, looking at her. Chip, she would tell her, every once in a while. After the office, they would leave. This time to go to the dance studio, because Holly, my wife, is a dancer. So while Holly was dancing, only she dances Spanish dances, Stellina would watch Chip and watch Chip and grow while she looked at Holly. Stellina was growing because she was eating. That's normal. You would say? I am growing because I am eating too, and you're right to say so. But Stellina was supposed to be fed by her mama, a bird. And Holly, my wife, was not her mama or a bird. The wild birds usually want only their mothers to feed them, and they are very picky about it. They often say, no one can feed me except my mama. But Holly, my wife, was patient, very patient and loving. She would peel and squeeze fresh grapes into Stellina's beak, crumble hard boiled eggs, and use her pinky finger, to feed Stellina. who was very hungry, cheap, and who stood there all the time with her big open wide like this. Ah!
Why not?
Why not? Stellina must have thought. Why not? Stellina must have thought. He can be my mother for a while. Stellina started to love Holly. My wife probably after they just stayed together this day and more. And Holly too couldn't stop leaving Stellina. Then one day Stellina learned how to eat by herself, and Holly was so happy she didn't have to feed her with her pinky finger any longer, and she didn't have to watch her all the time or take her wherever she went. Stellina was growing up. And then another day, Stellina learned how to fly all by herself, and Holly was so excited because Holly, my wife, doesn't know how to fly. She knows how to dance, but not how to fly. So Stellina, Chip, started to fly out of her cage, and around the apartment, looking for Holly. She would sit on her head, or on her shoulder, or on her arm, and look her in the eyes, Chip, as she did the very first day, and perhaps wonder, and now, what's going to happen now? She sang and flew and sang and sang and flew around all the time. The sounds made her sing more than any others. One was the shower, especially when Honey, my wife, was taking one. The other was the sound of the piano. Chip, chip, she sang along. Whenever I was drawing at my desk, she would fly to my head and play with my hair, trying to build a nest. Once she even flew to the pencil I was holding in my hand and stayed there for a while, bobbing and swaying and holding on to it tightly. Stellina lived with us for a very long time in the living room of our small apartment in Manhattan. We left Stellina's cage open so that she could fly around the apartment, but we never let her fly outside, since she was only used to Holly. My wife, to me, to her cage, and to this kind of life. She often sat on the windowsill and looked out. There wasn't that much to see, except a few windows and a tree. She looked pensive at the windowsill. She must have wondered, and now, what's going to happen now? Every night, Stellina would fluff her feathers, raise one leg, tuck her head into a wing, and go to sleep. She lived in a cage that was her home, and she knew it was her home. We often wondered if her birdie mama, knew where she was, and also wondered how her life, so different from other birds' lives, would have been if Holly, my wife, hadn't heard Chip Teddy many years ago in the middle of the traffic. She might not have survived that very night, and she might not have lived to love Holly, my wife, and she might not have lived to be loved so much by Holly, my wife, by me, and by everyone else who met her. But we wonder. Her name was Stellina. She died not long ago, after more than 8 years with us in our apartment, not far from that part where she was born. Her name was Stellina, which in Italian means little star.